Welcome to the weird and wacky world of the monkey's bum. Well, maybe you will never hear an introduction to a chess video like that again. I just had to say it like that because we are now going to look at an opening with one of the strangest names, surely the strangest name in chess. If anyone can think of a better opening name than the monkey's bum, then you've won this competition. But I think this is the craziest name for a crazy opening. And well, my name is Simon Williams, which I'm sure you're well aware of. And I've been doing this series on spicy openings, spicy gambit attacking openings with one e4. So I've covered most things so far, but I have not come up with an option against the perk defense. And the perk defense is what a lot of people call a hyper modern opening. So it's an opening after e4 where black tries to attack the center of the board from the sides. So this is why it's a hyper modern. This kind of play started with Nimzovich in the old days, rather than the classical play of taking control of the center with the center. Hyper modern play, which is the perk, attack the center from the side. Now you might be thinking, how on earth did this opening get the name the monkey's bum? Well, there was a funny story. There was an English international master called Nigel Povar, and in the 1970s in England, the modern defense, or the perk, which is this other name, the system with G6, was extremely popular. And one day, Nigel Povar was analysing with a friend, and he came up with the idea after this move G6 to go bishop C4 straight away, and then after the move bishop to G7 to go queen to F3, which looks like a complete beginner's idea, just going for queen takes f7 checkmate. And his rather crazy idea was that after black defends against the checkmate, which is really only possible in a good way with a move e6, to play the move d4. And this sacrifices a pawn immediately. Black can take this pawn with bishop takes d4, but now knight to e2 was Nigel's idea, hence the monkey's bum. Well, I say hence, why the monkey's bum? Well, he was showing this to a friend of his, and his friend said, and his friend was Ken Coates, another player, and his friend said, if that works, then I'm a monkey's bum. And the name stuck. So the monkey's bum first appeared in print in the mid-1970s, and Nigel Pover even wrote an article on the theory of the monkey's bum, which I'd imagine in some circles was very confusing. The theory of the monkey's bum. I mean, it's a good thing it's chess related, should I say. Very confusing name. Now, in my opinion, this position we have on the board here, I'm not totally comfortable recommending this precise line to you because I believe white doesn't have enough compensation. And all the gambits I'm trying to give you, I don't want them to lead into really bad positions for you. So I'm going to recommend a line called the deferred monkey's bum. So another confusing line, but it's similar to this variation, but we're doing it in a slightly different way, a slightly less risky variation, a slightly less risky way. So let me now introduce to you the deferred monkey's bum. I'm actually going to Gibraltar this Sunday to commentate on the chess events over there where monkeys are running around everywhere. So every time I say the word monkey, I'm thinking about Gibraltar, but monkey's bum does bring in some rather strange images to me. So anyway, on to this deferred monkey's bum. So after the move g6, rather than going for bishop to c4 straight away, I think the best way to play here is with the simple move d4, gaining these 2 pawns in the center. So this is the traditional way of playing against the hyper-modern way, controlling the center with 2 pawns. Now, the modern defense, the perk defense, is with bishop to g7. And now the deferred monkey's bum continues with knight to c3. And here, black really has 2 sensible options. Black can either go d6 or c6. It's worth pointing out that a move like knight to f6 would be a mistake because you can target this knight immediately with e5. And now the knight probably has to go back to g8 again. So clearly not a good plan for black. Now, I expect the main move here is d6. This is the main option. But as a rule, what we're doing with white is always placing our bishop on c4. So this is the deferred version of this rather strange opening. So we're setting up with e4, d4, knight c3, and bishop to c4. So these are our first four moves against the Perk. Now, we're going to come on to d6 move a little bit later on. This is the most common move. Before we go on to that move, let's first of all look at c6, which you may face at some point in your career. Now, c6 is trying to play d5. The idea behind black's play is to try to play d5. And the good thing about this variation, one of the reasons I picked it for this video, if you combine this with the hillbilly attack, then you will see a similarity. When black plays c6, we play bishop to c4. So it has some kind of theme here. And the reason this is a deferred version of this monkey's bum is that we're going to go queen to f3 next. And in this position, what does black play? Well, the main move, I'm just going to show you a game now between Judith Pogar, who's now sadly retired from chess, and Alexei Shirov, two very brilliant chess players. And this is a game where Judith Pogar won in great style using this opening. And Shirov played d6. Now, against c6, the rule is you play your queen to f3. So the basic rule against a c6 setup, you play your bishop to c4 and your queen to f3. Why do you do that? Well, number one, you attack f7. Number two, you give extra protection to the d5 square. Now, we will later on look at the move d6 here. And against d6, we still go bishop to c4. But unless black plays c6, we don't move our queen to f3. So if black plays c6, so we've transposed back into the line we're going to look at in a second, this Shirov game. But if black plays another move here, then our queen is actually better placed on somewhere like e2. So that's the difference, the subtle difference. But first of all, let's look at the c6 moves. So after c6, bishop c4, d6, we go queen to f3. Black has to stop the checkmate. Only good way of doing that is e6. And now we need to develop our last two pieces. Where should the knight on g1 move to? Knight to e2. And here, a number of options for black, but the way white's going to play, the way you're going to play is with moves like bishop to f4, castles queenside, and even h4, h5 attacking. This is your attacking plan. So in the Shirov game, b5 was played. The bishop dropped back to b3. Shirov tried a5. We have to do something about the threat of a4, so Judith just played a3, bishop a6. And now in this position, because black's played so many pawn moves, Judith Pogar thought it was a good idea to blast open the center. And this is the way to think in openings. If your opponent is wasting a lot of time not developing his pieces, not getting castled, then look at ways to open up the position. So d5 was a brilliant move played here, trying to open up the position because of white's superior development. And now after d5, we had c takes d5. And I'm going to go for the next moves quite quickly. Knight to e4, queen to c7 was played, and now a nice idea, c4 from Judith, opening up this diagonal towards the king on e8. B takes c4, bishop to a4, check, knight d7. And even though white has sacrificed a pawn, it's very good compensation here. Knight to c3 came. And okay, I mean, it was a beautiful variation. I mean, here Shirov played king to e7. And Judith now played a brilliant, amazing sacrifice. Knight takes d6, and it was actually game over here already. But king to e7 was a slight error. But the point behind this sacrifice was that after queen takes d6, the other knight came to e4. And now black's position was creaking. Queen takes d5, check with a bishop, all forwards attacking moves, and white's rook came to d1. Rook takes d7, check happened next, and it was pretty much a very easy win from Judith from this game. So very, very good result for the deferred monkey's bum there. So let's just go back to the start. This is a very simple way of playing against the Perk. Both your pawns go in the center. You put your knight on c3. If your opponent goes c6, what do you play? Well, bishop on c4, queen on f3. That's what you have to remember. If your opponent plays d6, we will now look at how you play against this. Again, you put your bishop on c4, so we keep in the theme of things. And black has a number of options here. What can black play? Well, I think the most common move here is knight to f6. This is the normal Perk move. And here, now that black hasn't gone c6, it's not as logical to play queen to f3. Instead, we move our queen to another square. So a rule here, if your opponent plays knight to f6 and d6, you continue with bishop c4 and queen to e2. And queen to e2 is a very nice move here. The point being, we want to use our e-pawn as a battering ram. We want to go e5 next, and maybe even e6. And this combined with the queen behind it and the bishop can be very, very dangerous. For example, after a move like castles here, we put our plan into motion. Pawn to e5. Let's say black takes on e5. He now has to move his knight. Where does he move his knight to? Well, we're going to go e6 against any move. This is the idea. e6 comes. For example, knight g4, e6. We're even attacking the knight here. One nice tactical point here is that after something like knight to e5, we take on f7 check. And here we have better development. Our opponent's king is slightly more weakened because our great bishop here and his pawn structure is not as good as ours. He has an isolated pawn. And if something like king to h8 here, we even have a tactical solution with bishop to h6. A nice little tactic. If our opponent captures on h6, we take on e5 with check, leading to a very good position again. So knight to g4 doesn't look like a very good response to e5. But we do the same thing against other moves. For example, knight to d7, we play e6 again. The same idea, using this pawn as a battering ram. And now, what can our opponent play? Well, knight to e5 would transpose to the last line. If our opponent takes on e6, we take with a bishop. What a strong piece. King to h8, and here just simple development is going to be good for us. Let's get our knight, our bishop out. If you want to be brave, you can even castle queenside later, and then you might even be able to throw Dirty Harry the H-pawn down the board. Good old Clint Eastwood coming up the board. H4, H5. I can't really do a Clint Eastwood accent, so I won't embarrass myself by trying any harder. But this kind of attacking idea, beautiful attacking chess. Now, what else can black play then? Well, that is the plan against knight to f6. So against knight to f6, we go queen to e2 with the idea of e5. There is a very interesting queen sacrifice here if our opponent plays knight to c6, a logical kind of move. We can still go e5 here, and I can't wait to play this in a game. The point behind this move is, well, our opponent can go knight takes d4, but we can now sacrifice our queen for 3 minor pieces. What a crazy line. By playing pawn takes f6, our opponent takes our queen. Pawn takes g7, and the rook has to move, and now we just take on e2 with the knight. And I've nearly always considered that the 3 minor pieces are nearly always better than the queen, especially if they can coordinate well together. But let's be honest, if you're going to follow my crazy opening ideas, if you want to be a complete psychopathic chess player like myself, then you're going to have to play positions like this. If you want to follow my recommendations, you have to go mad and get into the fun and enjoyment of crazy, unbalanced positions like this. And I would love playing this. It'd be great fun to play. I mean, it's so much better than lots of other boring positions. So right up my street, this position. And like I said, if you're going to do spicy openings, you have to do spicy queen sacrifices. Let's go back then and see if there's any other options instead of the move knight to f6. Well, we've covered a lot of things here, really. I mean, there's not so many other moves black can play in this position after bishop to c4. Not too many other options available. The only other thing that black might try to do here is a move like e5. He might try to put a block to our idea of going e5 ourselves. So that would be after the move knight to f6 is probably the correct way of playing first. Queen to e2 and then e5 here. But now our pieces are so well positioned, especially our bishop on c4. I mean, after we simply take on e5, compare the two developed bishops. Our bishop has a great diagonal. Black's bishop is locked in by its own pawn, so it's not a very good piece at all. And here we can simply develop knight to f3, queen to e7. Our bishop can come flying out, and just something like castles queenside. All our pieces developed. Lovely, lovely aggressive position and a good game for us there. So, to be honest, I think that's all you need to know against the perk. I think I pretty much told you everything there. I don't want to over confuse things. Let's just go over those simple points one more time. If your opponent plays g6 on move one, you gain the center first, then you develop your queenside knight, and then depending on what your opponent plays, you have to think where your queen goes. But first of all, you always move your bishop to c4. Let's say d6, you go bishop to c4, and here against c6, you put your queen on f3. Against other moves, you put your queen on e2 with the idea of going e5. Very simple chess. And then at least you can tell all your friends you played the monkey's bum, or the third monkey's bum. You could go down your local chess club, someone comes up to you, what was your game today? Sicilian, French defense, Rule Lopez? And you could just answer monkey's bum. And they might look at you and want to hit you because they might thought you've called them a monkey's bum, but actually you're talking about a chess opening. So you can explain to them the story behind this opening. What a brilliant name. What an exciting opening. And fits in very well, I think, with a spicy opening series.